Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Carolyn, and this video is going to be my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter video, as you could probably tell from the title of the video. But I mentioned in my most recent video, my makeup collection and declutter, that my husband and I are most likely moving out of state, and I also have a friend who is just getting into makeup but doesn't really have any makeup, and I told her, like, I have a lot of extra makeup so if you want any, it's gently used but I can sanitize it. And she was just like jumped on that. So I'm gonna be giving her the palettes that I'm decluttering. So because of those two reasons, I'm gonna be decluttering more palettes, or palettes that I wouldn't otherwise declutter, because I have someone specific to give them to, and I want to give her palettes that that are good quality, that she would actually like. And at the end of last year, or was it the beginning of this year, it was somewhat recently, I already decluttered the palettes that I didn't really like or were redundant or that kind of thing, and like just palettes that I would declutter anyway. I've already done that somewhat recently. So these palettes I'm decluttering are basically all the palettes that aren't absolute favorites of mine, or that I'm keeping for packaging for collector's reasons, because I like to do that. I like to keep those palettes. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, none of the palettes I'm decluttering are palettes or palettes I don't like. I really actually enjoy all of them. So yeah, and I went into this declutter already knowing which palettes I was gonna be parting with, which ones I was definitely gonna be keeping. So this isn't a video of like me deciding which ones I'm decluttering and which ones I'm gonna be keeping. But I will be sharing all of my thoughts on the palettes. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just keep on watching. Okay, I'm going to start off with Colourpop. I'm going to be keeping all of my Colourpop palettes because all of the Colourpop palettes I have are these like IP collabs with the special packaging that I like to collect. So I'm not getting rid of any of my Colourpop palettes, and Colourpop is the brand with the most that I have the most packaging, or like that I have the most palettes that I'm keeping for collector's reasons. So anyway, this is the Disney designer collection. This is what the color story looks like. It's a really great neutral palette. I really like the formula on this one. It's really easy to use. Like, if I want a neutral look, if I just want a quick neutral look, I'll go for this palette because it's super easy to pick out a look. Like, it's super easy to come up with a look, and then the application of these shadows is really easy as well. So yeah, that's a good one. And then I have the Tinkerbell palette, and oh sorry, this is the Sprinkle a Little Magic Tinkerbell. I just think, yeah, I love the packaging that they do for these. Don't want to show my face. This is a very unflattering angle, but this little Tinkerbell is so cute. They just have, like, they think of all the details with these palettes. But I like this one. I really like the color story. I just don't like these top two pink shades because they just don't show up on me at all. But other than that, this is a really fun palette, and like, I could always use a blush or something in replacement for these two. But yeah, I really like the color story, and then the packaging is just so pretty. So it's the Tinkerbell one. And then this is the Alice in Wonderland, and this is one they released recently. I really like the packaging. I got it for the packaging because it's Alice in Wonderland. I love Alice in Wonderland. The color story, I'm not the biggest fan of. Well, okay, I really like the shimmer shades in here. Like, I feel like the shimmers in this palette are really good quality. Like, there's their like glitter formula that's sort of a glitter but not a glitter. it's eye safe, and it's their new formula, and they have this in there, and I really like that shade. And I like this one. It's kind of hard to, like, you have to layer it a little bit, but anyway, I think I really like the shimmer shades in this palette. I also like these because these are kind of like almost duochrome shades, a little bit iridescent, and kind of shifty. But there's just not a lot of depth in this palette. There you get all these light shades and then this black. It's just hard for me to like, if I don't use the black, I really don't like the look that I do. Because I've worn this without wearing the black shade and I just don't really like it. But then the black shade doesn't really go like I wanted to. I mean, it goes well, I guess. I'm kind of going on too long about this palette, but basically I just find this palette somewhat limiting. So I don't like the color story, but I think the formula is pretty good. So that's my thoughts on this palette. I have the Snow White one. The packaging on this is so pretty with this. So I actually haven't used this. It's the only palette I have that I haven't used, but yeah, that's that one. I have this Nightmare Before Christmas palette that Deb sent me. This color story, I think the shadows like perform okay, but I think the color story is a little bit weird. So I think, well, I've only used it a handful of times, but I haven't mixed like these grungy tones, these like cool tone shades up here. I haven't mixed those with the brighter shades, but I just feel like it's a weird color combination. But I have used the brighter shades, and I think it's definitely a fun palette with the bright shades in here. But yeah, I'm really thankful to Deb for sending this to me. I have the Hocus Pocus Gather Round Sisters one. This is missing. This is a pressed glitter. I took that out. This one, I was trying to like use it to make a new eyeshadow in a different palette, so I haven't actually used it to where I've hit pan. But this one, I like the color story a lot, but the formula is not my favorite. These mattes, I feel like I don't know if I got a dud or what, but I really don't like these mattes. They're really patchy and just hard to work with. So yeah. This is the Hocus Pocus Switching Hour. This is like what their release after the Gather Round Sisters. And I do like this color story. I think it's a cute little palette. So I've gotten a lot of use out of this purple shade. And overall, I do like this palette. I like that there's neutral shades up here with the colorful shades. I feel like it's a pretty user-friendly palette in my opinion. So yeah, I like that one. This one is my favorite. They did 3 Hocus Pocus palettes. But, so this is the Hocus Pocus 2 palette. And this is my favorite of the 3. I think I really like the way they laid it out. I think it's really easy to come up with a lot of fun looks with this palette. And these two, is it these two or just this one? Anyway, this was like their first attempt at doing that glitter formula without it being a glitter formula, like with it being eye safe and everything. And I think it was successful, and I really like this shade. So yeah, like that one. So then I have their Star Wars palettes. I have the Darth Vader, nice cool toned, smoky kind of eyeshadow palette. I don't wear cool tones too often, but I do really like this palette. I like kind of mixing the red with these darker tones, and I think you can get some really pretty looks with this palette, so I like that one. This is the C-3PO palette. Definitely kind of a monochromatic gold color story, but I do really like these kind of yellowy gold tones from time to time. I think this is really great for the summer, and the performance of this palette is really good. I have the Child palette from Colourpop. This is another one of my favorite palettes from Colourpop. I think these shimmers perform really well. I like the tones in this palette. I think they're very flattering. So yes, one of my favorites. I also really like the Mandalorian palette. I think this little guy's so cute. Oh, and this one's cute too. It says it says cutest in the galaxy here. But I feel like Colourpop does such cute packaging with their collab palettes. So I love collecting them. And I do enjoy this one. It's like a little bit of a cool toned neutral palette. I I don't really have anything negative to say about it. I think the performance is good. It's not a palette I use very often, but I do really like it. This is the Star Wars palette, and this is one of my favorites from Colourpop. I think this might be my favorite Colourpop palette. I'm not totally sure, but really enjoyed this one. And I think like there's like three Super Shock formulas in here. This one is like a really pretty topper. They're very like the metallic and just really pretty on the eyes, and I feel like you could just do a lot of different directions. And I feel like you could just go a lot of different directions with this palette. So every time I've used this palette, I've had a lot of fun. So I'm really happy to have this one. Then I have the Harry Potter palette from Colourpop. And this one, the one thing that annoys me with the Colourpop collab palettes is that they're all different sizes. Not all of them are different sizes, but they put so many different sizes, and I kind of wish they would just be like all the same, or at least just have like these two as the sizes. But yeah, they have these other ones that are just like this one's too big. So anyway, sorry, that's my little rant. Let me get this totally in frame here. This is a palette I don't really use very often. I've used it maybe 3 times, I think. It's just because like it doesn't fit with the rest of my display palettes, like on display around my vanity, and I don't want the cover to get messed up with like putting it in my drawer and stuff. So I don't really use this too often, and I don't really like palettes that are this size necessarily. I don't know. The color story is just okay to me. I kind of see this as one palette and this as another palette. I'm just not super inspired to use this palette, but maybe I should. I technically did retired it last time, like my last declutter, but it's not like the formula, it's still pretty new, so the formula works fine. Anyway, I should probably use this more, but yeah, so that was all my Colourpop palettes. And then I have this palette. This is the ZC in the British Museum Alice in Wonderland palette. I think it's, I don't know which, oh, it's Alice in the Flamingo, I think. But anyway, this one, this is a retired palette, so this one I keep purely for the packaging, but I don't use it at all because I dropped it, and you can see here Alice is a little bit broken, but I dropped it, and like I don't remember which shimmer shades fell on the floor on the tile, but I think it was there was at least 2. I know there was 2. There might have been 3 that fell that I had to like pick up with a spoon and smush back in. So I'm not going to put this on my eyes, but I don't want to get rid of it because I love the packaging. So yeah, I don't count this in my palette inventory though. And I'm sorry, my dog is being really noisy right now. I hope you can't hear her, but anyway. Next I have the Sigma Alice in Wonderland palette. I think I do enjoy this one, and the formula is good. It's not like the best formula I've tried, but I think it's pretty good. And I love that it's Alice in Wonderland. This is the only palette I have from Sigma. But yeah, I do enjoy this palette. I think the formula is decent, and obviously I got it because it's Alice in Wonderland. I have this Venice Fling palette. This was a palette by Bailey Sarian and Estate Cosmetics. And Bailey Sarian is a YouTuber, and I just love her videos, and I love her, so I wanted this palette. And this was sent to me by a friend on Instagram who has since passed away, so I will be hanging on to this palette for as long as I can. I don't plan on ever decluttering this. But yeah, so what happened was I commented on a friend's post that was using this, that had used this palette, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of bummed I missed out on that one because I love Bailey Sarian. And then Jamie messaged me and was like, hey, I have it, I'm not using it, do you want it? And she sent it to me, so I thought that was so sweet. But this is what the palette looks like. And I feel like this is a really versatile palette. Like it would be handy to take on a trip or something, because you have these well, these two definitely could be used as blushes. These two, maybe like a mixture. Maybe this one is a little bit too warm for a bronzer, maybe more of a blush. I guess it depends more on your skin tone as well. But for me, this would be a bronzer. And I feel like these three, I've talked about it before on my channel, but these three make such a pretty eye look. This is one I will be keeping primarily for like sentimental reasons, but it is one that I enjoy using. But yeah, so I miss Jamie. I miss seeing her posts. So I am really glad that I have this, and like I said, I'll be keeping it around. This is the What's Up Beauty Desert Monsoon palette. What's Up Beauty is an indie brand based out of Arizona. They sell like a lot of nail polish actually, and brushes and stuff too, but they recently started selling palettes. And as soon as I saw this palette, I was like, that reminds me of Arizona. Before I even knew anything about What's Up Beauty and that they're based out of Arizona, I was like, I want that palette. It reminds me of Arizona because I've lived in Arizona my whole life. So anyway, that's the main reason I got this. This is what the color story looks like. This is a good palette if you want kind of a neutral palette with some pops of color. I think the formula is pretty good. It's not like spectacular. It's not the best formula I've tried, but I also can't really fault it. It's just like, it's just good. And I think this is like a great travel palette because you can do kind of more colorful looks with this kind of quad here, and maybe the shade Sun. You can kind of do like a little bit more bolder looks, and then you could definitely go neutral. And then I like to use these shades in my eyebrows too, so this would be like my perfect travel palette. So I don't really travel very much, but if I did, I would take this one. Whenever I travel, I'll take this palette with me. So yeah, it's the What's Up Beauty Desert Monsoon palette. And I have the Sydney Grace Tiny Marvels palette, and Sydney Grace and Mel Thompson Tiny Marvels palette. And Mel, I think she did such a great job with this cover art, and I know she had like her tattoo artist help her kind of design the palette. And I don't even like bugs, but I really like this cover art. I really miss Mel. If you didn't know, she was a YouTuber and she's since passed away, but she was so sweet, and I really miss like her reviews on everything. And I think, yeah, I miss seeing her videos. Are still up, but I miss her. But anyway, I think she did a really good job with designing this palette, because you can take this palette in so many different directions and it's very versatile. And I've just done some really pretty looks with this palette, and the formula is really good. The mattes are fantastic. The shimmer shades are very foiled and metallic. And I'm filming on I use my camera phone to film, or the camera on my phone to film, and I don't know if it picks up as well as it should. And please excuse my super dry hands. They look so, I'm not really self-conscious about them in person, but on camera they just look so bad. But anyway, back to the palette. I think, yeah, I'm really happy to have this palette. It's one of my favorite palettes, like definitely in my top 5. I'm pretty sure it still is. At least it has been all its life, but it's up there. And it's a palette that I don't really ever want to declutter. So yeah. Okay, so next I have my Melt palettes. I have the stack here. I'm gonna be going through them one by one, but I'm gonna be keeping all of these. I've just gone through the majority of the palettes that I'm going to hang on to for packaging, collector's reasons, for whatever. I have my own reasons. I've already gone through the majority of them. There's still some here that I plan on not getting rid of, and I'll probably talk about that when I get to them. But I don't plan on getting rid of my Melt palettes anytime soon. I just really love their aesthetic, and their matte formula is like one of my favorites, and definitely want to keep them on hand. And yeah, so I'm going to be keeping all my Melt palettes, and they're another indie brand, but you can get them from Sephora. Although I recommend getting them online. That's because I get their palettes online half off. Like, I never pay full price for their palettes because they run sales so much. So I mean, they run 50% off sales, I feel like, at least once a quarter. But anyway, I'm just gonna get started. So this is the She's in Parties palette. It's a really nice, like, purpley, plummy palette. So their mattes are really good. Their shimmers are not nearly as good as like other indie brand shimmers, but they're okay. They're just not spectacular. And some of them are just like not that good, which I'll talk about those when I get there. But yeah, so these are okay. Like, they're not the best, but the mattes in this are really good. This is, I think, one of Melt's best quality eyeshadow palettes, the She's in Parties. So yeah, that's that one. This is the Mary Jane palette. This was my first Melt palette, and this was sent to me by DW from Dub's Beauty Diary. So thanks so much, DW, for sending this to me. This was my first Melt palette that made me want to keep buying more Melt palettes, and now I've become like a Melt stan. But the mattes in this palette are really good. These shimmers are even pretty good, except for these two on the ends are super crumbly. They're just kind of a mess. And I always do my eyeshadow before my face because of fallout. But if you're going to use this palette, you have to do your eyes first, for sure. Like, I would never recommend starting with like having a full face before you go into this palette, because you're going to have to redo it. But anyway, I still love this palette. I love the tones, like the cool tones that aren't like just gray tones. I mean, I know you have these like charcoaly gray shimmers, but the mattes, none of the mattes are gray, which I like that about this palette. Yeah, I do really enjoy this palette, even though these end shimmers are really a pain to work with. I have the Melt 420 palette, and I really like the color story of this one. Unfortunately, the formula is not that great, especially for Melt with their mattes. Like, these three are pretty chalky, and you can make it work with like a white base, or I've kind of made it work with the NYX white base primer that I got from the Sparkle Cake Face from Instagram suggested to me. It's like comes in that little pot. Let me grab it real quick. So I use this with it, and it helps a little bit, but it's still not my favorite formula. And then this shimmer, I don't even use that anymore. I tried to make it work, and it just, I'll show you. Like, I kind of dig. That was me digging my finger in, kind of. I've used it with a brush. Like, I go in always with a brush before I try to use my finger, but either finger or brush is just like, I don't know. It's kind of a useless shade for me. So yeah, that's my 420 palette. I have the Gemini palette. I do like the shimmers in this palette. I find like this one is kind of impactful, and I mean, it doesn't compare to like my other shimmers from other indie palettes, but it's good for Melt shimmers. And then I like to do just like this grungy kind of color story. I haven't used this that much, like maybe 2 or 3 times, so I definitely need to use this more. But yeah, that's a Gemini. And then I have the Gemini 2, which was sent from Chris from YouTube. From her channel is the Bedazzled Buddhist now. But anyway, thank you so much, Chris, for sending this to me. I have used this actually somewhat recently, and I do really like the colors in this palette, like the color combination of these like blushy tones with these like grungy greens. I think it's a fun palette. So yeah, that's the Gemini 2 palette. And last but not least, I have the Rust palette, which may be possibly my favorite Melt palette. I don't know. But yeah, this is the Rust palette. I feel like this is like the most beginner friendly of the Melt palettes, because I feel like Melt's mattes, like, although they're my favorite, they're really pigmented. So if you're a beginner, you might have an easier time with using a palette that isn't so pigmented, that you can like build up a little bit, because these, like, they pack a punch. So, but I think this one is possibly the most beginner friendly. So if you don't like this palette, you probably won't like Melt. That's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, this is like one of my favorite Melt palettes. I love the tones in this palette. It's like a really pretty neutral palette, like a neutral palette with a twist. Yeah, so those are all my Melt palettes. I do want to get more from Melt. I kind of want to have all of their palettes, honestly. I guess that's just kind of like the collector in me. But yeah, so that's my Melt palettes. Okay, let's go over Natasha Denona next. Okay, so this may surprise some of you, I'm not sure, but okay, so I got all these three in a Black Friday sale, and I got them all half off. So let's see. So I have the Love palette and the Sunrise palette, and both of these I'm going to be passing along to my friend. When I got these, I didn't have as many palettes, and they were like super special to me, and they're just not quite as special like I have other palettes that I'd rather use, and because, you know, they're not Natasha Denona and good quality and stuff, I'd rather just like pass them along to my friend instead of just keeping them just because they're Natasha Denona. So this is the Love palette. This one I dropped on my floor, on my tile floor, and these three shades shattered like all over my floor, so I replaced them with like other Franken shades to put in here, and since then it just like it hasn't really been the same for me, and I haven't used it as much since then. But I don't, it's just a mental thing for me. Like the shades perform okay, it's just mentally I'm just not as drawn to it. Also, I think it might also be because I have other palettes that I'd prefer to use. So, and then the Sunrise palette, I don't really use very much, so I'm good. I'm okay passing this on to her. And same with the Love palette, the mini Love palette. I don't know if it's because it's a mini or what, but I feel like I've only used this like less than 5 times since I've gotten it, so I can pass this along to her and not necessarily miss it. And then I have these here. These were all sent to me from Deb, and I think I'm actually going to be giving all 3 of these to her as well. Okay, so I really like the Jubilee palette, and this palette I feel like is a really great, this is great for a great neutral palette. These mattes are so good, and these 2 shades I've kind of switched it around, but I think this shade was here, but I like these 2 shades together because I was using them in my eyebrows, because they're really good for eyebrow shades. But yeah, so I think she would really like this one. And then these 2 are super fun, and because she was talking about how she's excited to kind of play around with color, I think that she would love these, because this is the mini Tropic. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I said this is the Ayana palette, and these 2 are Ipsy exclusives. They were BoxyCharm, but I think BoxyCharm is now Ipsy, but they were like Ipsy or BoxyCharm exclusives. And then this one was one that you could just get at Sephora or wherever. But so this is the Ayana, this is the Jubilee, and this is the mini Tropic, and these 2 pair really nicely together, and I think she might have a lot of fun with these 2. That's why I was gonna keep them, but then I was like, you know, I have a lot of colorful palettes, and I think she would really have fun with these. The Jubilee palette is really good. But anyway, this is the bottom row of the full-size Natasha Denona palette, the Tropic palette. And within the Tropic palette, this shade, and I can't remember which one of these two of these shades, well, 3 of these shades are in the Tropic palette. So obviously these go well together. And the ones that aren't in the Tropic palette, the ones that are from another palette, are really similar to other shades on the Tropic palette. So I think she would have fun with these 2 palettes. So I'm going to be giving these to her. I have the Jungle Lights palette from Flower Beauty. This was also sent from Deb, and this one, these shimmers are fantastic. And that's why I'm going to be giving this to my friend, because I feel like she would love these. And I have so many special shimmers in my collection that this is kind of one of those things that I have to like remind myself to use. And I think that somebody else, my friend, would absolutely love these, because these are fantastic shimmers. And if you are looking for really good shimmers, this palette I think is like $20. I recommend this one because all of the shades perform beautifully, and I'm really excited for her to have this one. I think she'll really like it. So I have this Urban Decay Naked 3 mini palette. This was a gift from my father-in-law. He got it for me this last Christmas because he was my secret Santa. And I think for that reason, I'm going to be keeping it. The palette itself isn't super great. Like this shade has a lot of fallout, like kind of quite a bit of fallout. And then it doesn't really last all day. And then these two shades have, like, take a lot of building up. So the formula isn't that great. But I like having it. I have it sitting out like on my vanity, and I like seeing it. It makes me smile. It makes me think of my father-in-law. And he's so sweet. Like, he watches my videos. Well, I don't know if he watches them all the way through. I don't think he does, but I know he's watched my videos, and he's like talked about my videos with my sisters-in-law and like tells people about my channel. And so I don't know, this makes me think of him, and so I want to keep it because of that. So yeah, this is another one that I'll be just probably holding on to forever potentially, but not one I really use. But it does make me happy when I see it, so for that reason I'm gonna keep it. Okay, and then these two were both sent from my friend Ms. Moxie May from Instagram. She was doing some decluttering and asked me if I wanted these. So she wanted to get rid of this one because of it smells like perfume when you open it, and it does. It's kind of a strong fragrance. I don't know why they did that with this palette, but other than that, it is a really good palette because it is such a neutral palette and such a beginner friendly neutral palette because of like the way it's laid out. Super beginner friendly. And I have more than just my friend who's getting into makeup. I have, you know, my husband has 3 sisters, so I'm gonna see if someone else wants this because I feel like somebody else would get a lot more use out of it than I do. I'm gonna be passing this one along. I didn't say that this is from Too Faced. So, I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, it's from Too Faced. And then this is one I will definitely be keeping. This is the Sugar Drizzle Gnome Chrome Halloween palette, and the packaging is adorable. I can't, this is one I will be keeping probably potentially forever. I say that, but I don't really know what the future holds, but I don't plan on decluttering it unless I absolutely have to. But yeah, so this is all like, I think all duochromes. I haven't used every single shade. I've used probably half the shades in this palette so far. I kind of struggle to reach for all shimmer palettes, but I have enjoyed the times that I've used this palette, and maybe I should get like an all matte palette to pair with this or something. I don't know, but I need to use this more. But yeah, this is a fun palette. I'm super thankful that Ms. Moxie May sent it to me, so thank you if you're watching. So next I want to go through my BH palettes, and BH is a brand that, well, they've been bought out by Makeup Revolution, so I don't really know like what's going on with them at this point, but they did have, and they still have these palettes, some of these palettes on their website, but they did have a really great formula. And their palettes are like usually under $20, so, or these ones were, I think. But anyway, so I have the brunch collection, all 3 palettes. There's 3 palettes in the brunch collection, and I'll be keeping the 3 of these because I don't want to break up my brunch collection. But this is the avocado toast palette, and I feel like this is a lot of people's favorite of the 3, but for some reason it's my least favorite. I think I need to just play around with it more, but yeah, so the formula is really good. Like, the mattes are all good. The shimmers are really good. It is still a fun palette. This one is my favorite of the 3 because I love a good coral. This is the Mimosa palette, and I love a good coral, and this palette gives me all the corals that I need, and it has like an orange, and I wish it had more oranges. That's my only like qualm with it, is like there's really a lot of these same similar shades here, and I feel like they could have really used a little bit more orange in this palette, but that's just like my only issue. But these shimmers are so good, and they're not like I don't think the camera's really doing them justice, but yeah, this is a favorite palette of mine. And then I have the Blueberry Muffin. I do really like this one. I like that it's not just only, I like that you could go in different directions outside of blue, because you have this like fluffy shade, which is a peach, and then you have 360, which is more of a like a warm brown, and then you have Decadent, which is a cool brown, cool tone brown, and then of course you have the blues. I just think that like there's some really pretty shades in this palette. And then I have the Lost in Los Angeles palette, which is, I'll be keeping this one as well because I really like the color story of this. The pastels in this palette perform really well. I haven't tried a lot of pastels, but I do think like these aren't chalky. I can attest that these are good. I feel like I don't have any issues, and I've heard that like, you know, pastels, and you would think like pastels are kind of like chalky, hard to build up, but these aren't. These are just like really good right out of the gate, like pastels. So anyway, oh, and this was like, I filmed my first video using this palette, so it's kind of nostalgic for that reason. Like I probably won't ever get rid of this palette because it was like I used this palette for my very first YouTube video, although that video was terrible, so but yeah, I'm gonna be keeping this one. And last I have the Passion in Paris, and this one I think I will be giving to my friend because I think she would get more use out of it. I don't really use this one too much, and the formula, as I said, with BH is really good, so I think she would enjoy it. And I think I'm going to be telling her about like tutorials and stuff, and there's a lot of tutorials with this palette that she could follow, so I think she would really enjoy this one. So yeah, I'm going to be passing this along to her. And then I have these two ABH palettes. This was sent to me by Liz from my makeup garden here on YouTube. She also sent me this one at the same time, which I'll get to in a moment, but yeah. So this one, the Jackie Aina palette, I'm going to be keeping. If you know me, if you've been here from the beginning, you know this is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes. I think it was like it was my favorite in 2020. I think my second favorite in 2021. A top palette of mine. And then the Modern Renaissance, which I'm going to be giving to my friend because it's a great neutral palette and I think she would really enjoy it. And I don't use it that much, and it is a handy palette to have on hand from time to time because it was like one of my only neutral palettes, but I have some other, like I have the Colourpop Disney Princess one, and I just don't use this very much. And it's kind of funny because this one was sent, so Liz sent it to me, but I had previously had one of these, and I gave it to one of my sisters-in-law, and so this kind of replaced that. But now I think I'm ready to like declutter it again, and probably, I don't know, I don't think I'll need this palette again, but I think it'd be kind of funny if another Modern Renaissance ended up back in my life. But yeah, I'm gonna be giving this one away to my friend. I think she would really like it. I think the formula is really good on this. I mean, I know formulas have come a long way, but this is still a great formula. Blends really easy, so I think it's great for beginners, and I think she would really like it. So I'm gonna be giving this to her. And then this is the Nomad Cosmetics Berlin Underground palette, and Nomad is an indie brand, and you can't get this palette, and they don't make this palette anymore. You might be able to find it from like Poshmark or something like that, but they don't make this palette anymore. But this palette, there's one matte and then the rest are shimmers or satins, and the shimmers are kind of subtle, which I like from time to time, but I really like the tones in this palette. I like these kind of grungier tones, or like these more neutral shimmers. I just feel like they're very flattering on me personally, so I've just really enjoyed the looks I've gotten with this palette. And plus, since I'm gonna be giving away my Modern Renaissance palette that she gave to me, I want to keep this one. So I'm gonna kind of finish off with some indie palettes, and the first ones I'm gonna mention, I have just one palette from the brand. So this is Glamlight, and yeah, this is the only palette, like I said, I have from Glamlight. And this one, it's funny because I really like it now, but I didn't when I first got it. I thought the mattes were like too sheer and hard to build up and hard to work with, but then I tried it without, because I normally use like a lid setting shade, so like a cream color, like, or a face powder or something like that, especially with neutral palettes, because I just find that it helps the shadows blend better. But this one performs best without a lid setting shade, and so I finally tried it that way just because I was trying to think of ways to make it work, and I'm really glad I did, because now it's one of my favorite palettes. I definitely want to try more from Glamlight at some point, but I'm happy with this one. This is the Ace Beauté Paletopoly palette, and this is one of Caitlin House's favorite eyeshadow palettes. And Caitlin House does some gorgeous eyeshadow looks, and she has a YouTube channel, and I follow her on Instagram. But she has a lot of eyeshadow palettes, and she does, like I said, really pretty looks. So since she recommended this palette so highly, I got it because I do really like the color story. This is kind of my most colorful palette, I think, and it's a really fun palette. I'm really glad I got this one. I'm excited to use it more. It's one I keep wanting to use like over my other eyeshadow palettes, because I just see so many potential looks with this palette, and I feel like it's just a really fun palette. So, and the formula is really good. I like the shimmers are kind of a little bit of a squishy formula, which I kind of like. And then, yeah, the mattes are good too. So really glad to have this one. Probably want to try more from Ace Beauté. I have the Cosmic Brushes Muse palette, and Cosmic Brushes is a brand I want to try more from because their color stories are gorgeous. They just came out with a new palette that I want to get. What is it, like Dreamy Delights or something? It's supposed to be based off of like desserts or cotton candy or something. It's like pastels and stuff. But anyway, this is the Muse palette. I also want to get the Serenity and the Royal Rose, I think it is. Basically, I want to get all the palettes they have. This is the Muse palette. This is a really fun palette. I love the color story of this palette. I love the quality of the shadows. Like, I love the different textures in this palette. The mattes perform beautifully. No issues with this palette. I definitely want to get, like I said, like the rest of their palettes. I don't know when that will be, but it's something I'm planning to do. This is the Adept Heather Austin palette, and I got this because my friend Brittany from Brittany Ray Beauty, this is pretty much her favorite palette of all time, I think, and I can see why. Like, this is, if you want to try really good shimmers, really metallic, sparkly, intense shimmers, and my camera really doesn't pick up the intensity of the shimmers very well, but if you want to try some really nice foiled interesting shimmers, then I would go for Adept. They don't make this palette anymore, this specific palette, but they have other palettes, and this is the only one I've tried from them. But from what I hear, like all of their palettes have this kind of like shimmer, really great shimmer formula. And I think the mattes in this palette are really good too. I think Heather did a really good job like picking the mattes, because there's only 4 mattes, which is good for like Adept, because I feel like they really shine in their shimmers more than their mattes. Their mattes are fine too, but I really like the shades that she chose because they go well together, and it makes like these 2 shades go well together and these 2 shades go well together, and it makes this palette really versatile. So I'm really glad I have this one. I do want to try more from Adept, but yeah, this is my only palette from Adept, but it's a good one. And lastly, I want to go through my Odin's Eye palettes, and as far as indie brands or just brands in general, Odin's Eye is one of my favorites. But this is the Hella palette. It was in collaboration with Angelica New Fist, and this is one of my favorite palettes. Like, if you've been here on my channel before, you know that this was like my favorite palette for so long. But I won't go on too long about this one because you can't get it anymore. But yeah, this was my first time trying Odin's Eye, and it definitely made me want to try more from the brand. Yeah, so this is the Hella palette, one of my favorite palettes. And then I have all 3 of their Perfect World palettes that they recently launched in collaboration with Lauren May Beauty. Well, this one is in collaboration with Lauren May Beauty. This is the Sea Talk palette. And this is probably my favorite color story of the 3. I really like this neutral shade here. Well, both of these are great neutral shades. I love the combination of these 2 shades, like just this in the crease, this on the lid. Gorgeous, like neutral, bronzy, coppery look. Gorgeous. This matte in Dolphin Tail, I've had some issues with like blending. It's not the best matte. And same with this one, Night Swim. But I still really enjoy this palette, and I still really like having it. And I would still recommend it. Just know, like, this isn't Odin's Eye's best, but it's still really good. So that's that one. And the packaging is so pretty. This is the Flora Story palette in collaboration with Amanda from Makeup Just for Fun. This is like a nice kind of more neutral color story. And if you like purple and green, this is a great palette. And the only issue I have with this palette is this orchid shade. I've had issues with it, but I've gotten it to work. It's just a little bit finicky, but that's that one. And then the Planet Spirit palette with Betty Jean, and this is this one. This color story is, you have to be a color lover to like this color story. But if you do like color, it's a really fun palette. And lastly, I have these 2. These were both sent to me by Misty. So the Alva palette is one of their earlier formulas, and I think they've improved their formula since this palette quite a bit actually. But I think this is still a really good formula, and I've been using it lately because I brought it into my spring eyeshadow palette rotation, and I didn't use it this spring, so I'm using it now. And I've been thinking, like, this is a really nice palette. Like, these shimmers look really similar in the pan, but they're different textures and finishes, and I think this would be a lot of fun for my friend to play with. I think she would get a lot of, I think she would have a lot of fun with this palette, especially since she hasn't tried like indie eyeshadows. I think this would be a palette that she would love, so I'm gonna give this to her. And I'm going to be keeping the Verdandi palette. This is a kind of a fun palette. I really like this red shade. It's an interesting shade that I don't really have anywhere else. And of course, this is the shade that I dropped this palette, and this was the shade that kind of broke. At least it didn't shatter, but it's okay. Anyway, I don't think I'll use it up, even though I like it. And I also want to hold on to it because Misty sent it, and I feel this is like the last palette I have that she sent me, so I want to keep this one for, like, you know, sentimental reasons. And so yeah, I'll be keeping this one. So those were all of my eyeshadow palettes. I'm gonna do a final count, and I'll be right back with the final number. Okay, so I started with 52 eyeshadow palettes. I'm decluttering 11, and I'm keeping 41. And I'm happy about that. I'm super happy to be giving some of these palettes to my friend. I'm sure she'll be very excited. And I'm going to be giving a couple to my sisters-in-law as well, and I'm sure they're going to be excited. So, and I feel like they're all really good quality palettes as well, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, so that was my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed and you like makeup content. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!